Hello, everyone, and welcome to Slash Film Daily for Thursday, August 29th, 2019. On today's episode, we're going to talk about all things D23 Expo 2019. There was a lot of news and footage that hit at the convention, and we're going to talk about that. This is Slash Film Editor-in-Chief, Peter Sciretta. Joining me on today's podcast is Slash Film Managing Editor, Jacob Hall.
Hello, hello.
And Weekend Editor, Brad Oman.
Hey, that's me.
So, guys, I've been out sick. I caught the con flu, but I really wanted to talk about all these things that broke at D23. I know we're a little bit late to the party here, but we've had a ton of coverage on the site. By the way, the people, the Slash Film writers at home were kicking butt. We had, how many articles did we have from D23 coverage, Jacob?
45, actually closer to 50 once you include some other additional post-con things we wrote.
Yeah, I feel like I was just sitting in panels and running around the show floor just trying to type the information that was going into my eyes and into my ears to you guys on Slack, and we were able to get stuff up way before everybody else. So thank you guys for getting that done. Before I get into things, I should say that while I was at the convention, I ran into a lot of Slash Film readers, a lot of listeners to Slash Film Daily, people that told me they listen to it every day. So it was great to run into all these fans of the site. It was really, heartwarming to meet all these people because they all seemed like really cool people. So anyways, let's talk about Marvel. Let's start with Marvel first. Marvel was at the Disney Plus panel and kind of, they came with some surprises. I don't think we were expecting as many surprises from them. They announced 3 new TV shows for Disney Plus. The first of which is set in the Hulk universe. It is a TV show based on the She-Hulk comic book, which I know nothing about. So, Jacob, tell me about it.
Man, we have a lot to cover, so I'm going to be fast here. But She-Hulk is Jennifer Walters in the comics. She is Bruce Banner's cousin. And Bruce Banner gives her a life-saving blood transfusion after an accident, which gives her gamma powers. But unlike the Hulk, who can't control his, transformation to a green rage monster, she can. So when she's a Hulk, she is this sort of confident, powerful person who has her own personality. And in her best runs, she continues to be a lawyer. She is a practicing lawyer. And in the early 2000s, she became a specialist in superhero law, which meant that she would help Spider-Man sue J. Jonah Jameson for libel and help superhero characters with specific superhero problems. And that's kind of been her thing, is as a member of the Avengers, she punches stuff really hard as a Hulk, and then she goes to work as a lawyer helping superheroes in court cases. And it's often very funny. She's a very funny, charming character, and this has a really, really good potential to be like a Marvel criminal law courtroom series.
And that is not the only female superhero show that they announced at the convention. I know when Captain Marvel was happening, a lot of people were asking, what about Miss Marvel? What about Miss Marvel, which is a popular comic book right now? What about Miss Marvel, Jacob?
Miss Marvel series is also coming to Disney Plus. Miss Marvel is very much Peter Parker for our current age. She is a young girl living in New Jersey. She idolizes the Avengers. She's a big Captain Marvel fan. Her parents are practicing Muslims, and so is she. So she sort of has she already has a sort of issue where she sometimes feels left out of society. So she has outsider status already. And one day she learns that she's inhuman, and she has her inhuman powers to change her shape and increase her size and mass. And she decides to, as a tribute to her hero Captain Marvel, become Miss Marvel and become a teenage superhero in New Jersey. And the comic is so charming and so fun, and really leans heavily on what the best Spider-Man comics always were, which was Peter Parker trying to balance his ordinary life with being a superhero. Except that with Kamala Khan, she is a teenage Muslim in Jersey, as opposed to a white photojournalist in New York City. So there's a whole lot of stuff they can play with here, and the current comics are just so good.
So we lost Peter Parker in the MCU, but we're getting Miss Marvel.
Yeah, Kamala Khan is as good as Peter Parker has ever been. I'll say it. So I'm very happy about this, even though I'll be sad about Spider-Man being gone for now.
And it should be noted that Kevin Feige, with all of these shows, was kind of hyping up the idea that these shows are going to introduce these characters, but that doesn't mean that they're not going to be in the movies. They're going to be in the movies as well. So, you're going to have to watch these shows to be introduced to these characters before we see them on the big screen. And the last show that was announced is a Moon Knight series. Moon Knight is so out of my realm of Marvel comic book reading. Jacob, what do we know about Moon Knight?
Moon Knight is a deeply weird character and one I have a really hard time summarizing. He was first introduced as essentially Marvel's version of Batman. He's a mercenary who is left for dead in the Egyptian desert, becomes possessed by Egyptian gods, or maybe he's crazy. It could be both. Who knows? And he stalks around, New York, being this dark Avenger in a white cloak, using mystical powers to give him strength and insight. And the best versions of Moon Knight, in my opinion, have been in recent years, where they sort of shed the whole Batman ripoff thing and have leaned more heavily onto him trying to balance his many different personalities, which give him different abilities, and trying to, deal with the fact that he is a mentally unstable person who has incredible superhero powers. And I do not know which version of Moon Knight we can get here, whether it's the original version, who is a bit more of just Batman, or the more complex, nuanced version I've grown to like in recent years. But this is such an off-kilter character that they can kind of do whatever they want with him.
Okay, that does it for the Disney Plus shows, but there was also some Marvel movie announcements. They announced that Black Panther 2 is coming out on May 6th, 2022. So the question is this part of Phase 4 or is this part of Phase 5? Brad, what do we know?
As far as we can tell, it hasn't been made clear. It seemed like all the announcements that were made at San Diego Comic-Con were all Phase 4, and that was supposed to be it, even though it didn't culminate with an Avengers movie the way that the previous 3 phases of the Marvel Cinematic Universe have. But so it could go either way. This could either be the end of Phase 4, it could be the beginning of Phase 5. I'm sure Marvel just wanted to get this announcement out there because Black Panther was such a huge hit when it came out last year that they wanted to make sure that fans knew that a sequel was coming, even though it's still a few years out, just so that they can get excited for it and know what's going to be on the way in the future. Yeah.
It's interesting because Ryan Coogler was on stage and Kevin Feige basically asked him, who's going to be the villain of Black Panther 2? What is it? What's the title? And basically they were like, we can't say yet. So do we have any idea, any speculation on what Black Panther 2 could be?
Man, Peter, I have no idea. But I've read so few Black Panther comics. This is my blind spot. So I can tell you all about She-Hulk. Can't tell you about Black Panther villains.
There was some speculation that a certain line in Avengers Endgame that Okoye says about earthquakes happening near Wakanda might be something related to Namor. But if I remember correctly, I believe there was an interview with the Russos or either the Marcus and McFeely, the writing team, that wasn't something they intentionally put in to hint at Namor. And that's not to say that that couldn't be used as a way to introduce him later. It could be a detail. They're like, oh yeah, for sure, this is what that's referencing. But yeah, so I feel like there's no indication as to where that's going yet, and maybe something coming along in the future MCU projects will maybe lead into that.
Yeah. Another Marvel TV thing that we forgot to talk about is the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which is a mouthful of a Disney Plus title there. Got some casting news. Wyatt Russell, who we know from a bunch of things, including that Black Mirror episode that Dan Trachtenberg directed, and what's that movie with Aubrey Plaza that I loved, Brad?
Ingrid Goes West.
Yes.
And also 22 Jump Street.
Yes.
And Overlord. He's very good in Overlord.
Yeah. So we do know who he is playing, and what does that tell us about this upcoming series, Jacob?
He's playing John Walker, otherwise known as U.S. Agent, and this is a character who essentially, when Captain America is not around, the government says, we need Captain America, so they create U.S. Agent using, enhanced super soldier serum with John Walker. But since not every man is Steve Rogers, not everyone understands with great power comes great responsibility, U.S. Agent has been a frequent antagonist over the years, sort of the dark version of Captain America, the corrupted Captain America. So I think we're going to be seeing Falcon and Winter Soldier face off against the new Captain America, aka U.S. Agent, teaming up with Baron Zemo, returning from Captain America Civil War, which, I don't know about you guys, that sounds like a really, really intriguing way for both Winter Soldier and Falcon to sort of face their past, because they're facing the dark version of their best friend who left them the mantle of Captain America.
Huh. I was just going to comment on how lame of a name U.S. Agent is, but then I realized that Captain America is equally as lame. We're just used to it.
That's true.
Yeah. Okay. Other news. Let's move on to Star Wars, because there's a bunch of Star Wars announcements. There was rumors for some time that that Lucasfilm was working on an Obi-Wan Kenobi movie or TV series. Last week, it was reported that it was happening, and at the convention, it was confirmed as Ewan McGregor came out on stage and confirmed that he is going to be reprising his role as Obi-Wan Kenobi. Brad, what do we know about this one?
Not much more than that, to be honest. Ewan McGregor was confirmed to sign on for the series just before the announcement was made at the D23 Expo. And it seems like this series will take place somewhere around the similar time period that Solo, a Star Wars story does. We just learned from the Star Wars show on YouTube that the series itself will take place 8 years after the events of Revenge of the Sith, and the graphic that was shown during the D23 Lucasfilm presentation that kind of laid out where all of the Star Wars properties, both done and upcoming, land as far as their relation to each other, put Obi-Wan somewhere in the middle of the events of Solo, a Star Wars story. So I feel like there will probably be some crossover there as far as how Obi-Wan Kenobi's story plays out, maybe parallel with what's happening with Han Solo in his origin story. But beyond that, there's no release date yet. Production is supposed to begin sometime next year, so I would bet that we would get the series maybe sometime late in 2020 or early 2021. But otherwise, beyond that, we just got that basic information.
With that timeline, I know I said this when we were talking about this a week and a half ago, but I feel like, with Obi-Wan Kenobi's rivalry with Darth Maul, it seems like that might be a component of this, because they do come to a head in Star Wars Rebels, which could be shown, live action, that whole confrontation, that's later in the timeline. Do you think this is going to have to do with Crimson Dawn and could this be a backdoor Solo sequel that I know fans have been clamoring for, but Solo obviously didn't make enough money to warrant that?
I think that's probably a fairly safe bet. I'm not necessarily sure I would go so far as to say that it will feel like a Solo sequel, but I think that it will have some ties to the Crimson Dawn crime syndicate that we learned was being controlled by Darth Maul. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe the series starts with him getting some inkling that maybe Darth Maul is somehow alive, and he's trying to track this rumor where this information comes from, and he encounters several seedy characters who are part of Crimson Dawn. Maybe there's even a chance that Emilia Clarke and Paul Bettany could reprise their roles as Kira and Dryden Voss, since we don't really know a lot about what happened to them while Solo was off fighting for the Empire and doing his own thing until he ran into Kira again. So there's a lot of time here that's unaccounted for, and there could easily be some ties to that plot element there.
And I think Solo was also teasing the possibility of Jabba the Hutt and that stuff, and that's on Tatooine as well, where we think Obi-Wan is during this time. So who knows? What to say? They did premiere a new trailer, or I guess the first public trailer for Mandalorian. They showed one to you, Brad, at Star Wars Celebration. It leaked online, but this was the first one I think that was broadcast. Am I correct on that? This was the first one that was officially online?
Yeah, none of the footage that played Star Wars Celebration was made officially online.
Yeah, I am so in for this show, guys. This is so everything I want a Star Wars series to be. I feel like this time, more than when they were at Star Wars Celebration, they were selling it on the idea that the pitch for this show was that Favreau wanted to see what the Star Wars galaxy was like after the fall of the Empire. So it's kind of it's not just the Empire falls and this galaxy is just this peaceful place. It's kind of a world of turmoil. And I feel like this trailer kind of gives us a glimpse at that, which I think is kind of exciting. I love that opening shot with the Stormtrooper helmets, on stakes and stuff like that. Jacob, what did you think of this trailer?
This trailer rules hard, Peter. I try to be cynical. I try to keep a distance about, everything related to big franchises, because it's in my best interest as a writer and editor to remain neutral on some level about this stuff, but especially when Disney is being a corporate behemoth these days and eating everything and making me nervous. But this looks really good, and it makes me really excited, and I know I'm going to pay for Disney Plus just to watch this, Peter. So, there I am.
Yeah. Brad, does this get you more excited than what you saw at Star Wars Celebration?
I wouldn't say more excited. I think I'm just still riding that wave of excitement from that first bit of footage, because they showed us a lot more at Star Wars Celebration than what they did in this trailer. And I'm definitely, like Jacob says, all in on this series. It looks so cool. I love the Western vibe that it has. It feels like it's taking place in sort of this like an old West sector of the Star Wars galaxy, if you will. It's got that a real boy vibe to it. It seems grittier while not necessarily straying far from the vibe of the original Star Wars trilogy. I like the look of it. I like the cast. That's just. I'm in to see what the show is like.
Yeah, I'm a little bit worried about the messaging. When they were up on stage, Kathleen Kennedy and Jon Favreau were basically saying that, this is a show that if you have never seen a Star Wars movie before, you will totally be able to understand everything, but it will still also reward longtime fans. And I'm like, who I feel like them saying that is just a step backwards, because I don't think anybody I know that has, is not a Star Wars fan is going to watch the show. Yet saying that to a group of Star Wars fans, basically gives me a little pause that it might not be the show I want it to be. Jacob, do you know what I mean?
I know what you mean, but I also think your fears are unfounded. They're just trying to make sure that, Disney Plus gets as many people as possible. I think it'll be fine.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about Rise of Skywalker. They released a thing that they didn't want to call a trailer, but it was really a trailer. It is now online for everybody to watch. But Brad, you did a fantastic breakdown of this on the site. I will link it in the show notes. Okay, so with this trailer, I think the thing that everybody's talking about is this last ending shot that shows Rey in a black cloak. She has a double-bladed lightsaber, a switchblade lightsaber, kind of like I guess we've seen like the Jedi Temple Guards have in the animated series. But it's badass. It's a red blade. It's definitely insinuating that she might have joined the dark side. And people were shocked in the room. The reaction to this shot was just incredible. Like hearing that collective gasp of 7,000 people in that room. This doesn't come to a surprise for me, because you guys have been hearing me talk about this film for years now, and I think that J.J. Abrams has clearly been teasing the idea that Rey has been hearing the call of the dark side, that she's, even in the original Force Awakens novel, you hear like someone like Palpatine or Snoke in her head, while she's fighting Kylo Ren. Brad, what did you think of this shot? What do you make of this? Is this reality? Is this a dream? Is this a vision? What is it?
The shot is awesome. I absolutely loved it when I saw it. The lightsaber is impractical, but it just looks totally cool. She looks like a badass in that shot with the cloak on. Even her face is given this glowing quality. Like it's I don't even know how to describe it. It's like her whole entire face is coated in highlighter, basically. But it's I'm of the belief that this is probably some kind of dark side vision, either something that the Emperor is like showing her as what she could be if she were to turn to the dark side, or even maybe something that he's showing Kylo and how much more powerful she can become than him. Maybe something that pushes him away from being loyal to the Emperor or something like that. Because I find it hard to believe that the first time Star Wars has a lead female Jedi character in a franchise that they're going to turn her to the dark side and make her a villain. That would seem to betray a lot of fans, even though there are fans out there who think it is very cool that Rey if she would turn to the dark side. I just think that it wouldn't make much narrative sense to put Rey through all this and then just have her become a villain, and then have presumably Ben Solo become the hero. It just seems kind of counterintuitive to me. If anything, I think this is just trademark J.J. Abrams misdirection, showing us something shocking, just to make us speculate and wildly guess at things.
Yeah, no, but I will say this. I think if you were George Lucas and you were planning the series from what we saw of Force Awakens, I feel like that's where he would have went. Do you know what I mean? I feel like there would have been the redemption of Kylo Ren, the fall to the dark side of Rey. That would have been very symmetrical. And obviously, I don't think you can do that now. Kylo Ren, it's going to be very hard to redeem him at this point. Jacob... Oh, and by the way, of Kylo Ren, I want to point out, my girlfriend Ketcher pointed this out. I didn't notice it the first time I saw this trailer, but that lightsaber, that red double-bladed lightsaber that Rey has in that scene is very unstable, almost like Kylo Ren's saber, as like those sparks and stuff like that. Jacob, what did you make of this reveal?
It's a great shot, but Brad is right. There's no way they're turning Rey to the dark side.
Yeah. She's
going to have a Luke in the Dagobah cave-esque vision where she sees herself like this, and it will be a great moment because people will screen cap it, and there'll be novels and comics exploring alternate universe Rey, but it's going to end with Rey rejecting the call of the dark side.
I mean, I do agree with you guys, but I do want to say that this does gel quite nicely with my theory that I talked about on the podcast in the past, that Rey could be the descendant of someone from the dark side. So maybe
I think the wildest theory that I saw is that somebody thinks that Rey is a clone, and that there's a version of her that has been turned to the dark side.
That's even beyond my level of geekdom there. Was there anything else? I know you have this whole trailer breakdown on the site, Brad, but is there anything else that's notable of talking about from this trailer?
I think for me, the other coolest thing also involves Rey, and it's that shot of her throwing that lightsaber through the jungle and cutting like a tree trunk right down the middle. We haven't really seen that kind of a move before. I know Vader throws his lightsaber at Luke in Return of the Jedi, but it's not really a calculated force move. It's more of like just a clumsy, like him trying to get Luke down from the second level of that platform on the second Death Star. And he doesn't like use the force to call the lightsaber back into his hand in such a cool way. It's actually something that is reminiscent, funnily enough, of that that terrible PlayStation fighting game, Masters of Terrascasi, because one of the special moves of all of the Jedi characters was to throw your lightsaber across like the arena, and like it takes down your opponent's power by a huge amount, and then like you call it back to you. But what's also notable...
See, it all comes back to Solo: A Star Wars Story, because they mentioned that in that movie.
What is notable is that it does seem that jungle environment is the exact same one where Leia and Rey embrace in the first teaser, and there's also a shot of Leia in this special look that has Leia in the same environment. And so I wonder if Leia, obviously being trained in the ways of the Force herself, is providing some extra guidance to Rey in Luke Skywalker's stead.
There's one last shots I want to talk about here. There's one shot of C-3PO, and he has these red eyes. Has C-3PO gone to the dark side?
I think he just got a hold of some real dank weed.
And there's another shot of like all these Star Destroyers in the sky, like almost maybe hundreds of Star Destroyers in the sky. But the one thing I noticed here, I'm not sure if you mentioned this in your breakdown, Brad, but the Star Destroyers have like these like red to them. Like, are these the Star Destroyers of the First Order, or could these be Sith Star Destroyers controlled by Emperor Palpatine?
I didn't notice any red at all when I did like a frame by frame shot through, because I was trying to get the best shot possible of that army of Star Destroyers. But they're definitely not First Order Star Destroyers, because if you look at them, they have those little globes on each side of the bridge of the Star Destroyer. So they are definitely Imperial Star Destroyers. And my best bet actually is that this is likely some kind of reserve army of Star Destroyers that was meant to be used by the Emperor, perhaps once the second Death Star was completed, to continue the reign of the Empire and expand their reach across the galaxy, but maybe he never got to use them. Either that, or this is some dormant contingency plan that the Emperor had in place should he die that maybe hasn't yet been activated, and that perhaps Kylo Ren learns about and is trying to track down so that he can build up his own forces.
Huh. I think that's a good theory. Okay, let's move on. Let's talk about another Disney Plus thing that I saw. There is something. There's a Disney Plus movie coming from Tom McCarthy, who who is the director of Win-Win, Spotlight. He is Academy Award winning, right?
Yeah, he also made The Cobbler.
Yeah. Well, he's directing this adaptation of a children's book called Timothy Failure.
Timmy Failure, to be exact.
Oh, Timmy Failure. Yeah. And that premiere, or like they showed the trailer for that during the Disney Plus presentation. I know we didn't write about this on the site because it's not online, but I want to say how, number one, I'm surprised that Tom McCarthy is doing a Disney Plus movie. Number two, this trailer looks so quirky, so charming. It's about a kid, like 11-year-old boy who he believes he's the best detective in town, and he happens to have his partner is a 1,200-pound imaginary polar bear who is fully realized in CG, and it's the craziest thing. I feel like watching this trailer, I want to put it on everybody's radar. I know this is a Disney Plus movie, and I feel like people have already been that's kind of the ghetto of Disney movies. Like, you know, if it can't be on the big screen, it's not going to be big. But like, this is Tom McCarthy. This looks like it has the potential to be like a Paddington type of like hit. I mean, you know, like just a critically acclaimed thing. It looked like it's very lovely, very charming, very funny, very surprising. So put that on your radar. Timmy Failure. Okay, let's move on to Disney animation. They showed some new stuff from Frozen 2. You can read on the site about all that. Nothing very surprising. I will say at the last, or maybe 2 D23s ago, when they pulled the curtain and revealed Frozen 1 for the first time, they had Idina Menzel, she came up on stage and sang Let It Go for the first time. The first time any public audience had heard that song was on stage at D23. At this D23, they had the cast of Frozen 2 sing a song, and I gotta say, it was not as I feel like at the Let It Go D23, everybody in the room had chills. At this one, it seemed like a fine song. It seemed like a cute, but not as catchy as Let It Go. So take that for whatever it's worth. Another project that was announced at the convention was this project called Raya and the Last Dragon. This is an animated movie that takes place in an alternate world where it's a reimagined Earth with distinct lands, and together they form the land of the dragon. But the actual dragons have been long gone, and the world has been invaded by a dark force, and Raya is on a quest to find the last dragon. This takes place deep within like Eastern mythology. It looks very, very promising. The people involved in this are all great people, like Paul Briggs, who was writer on Frozen, Dean Wellens, who's on Zootopia, and this is going to they're attached to make their directorial debut with this one. We have some information and some concept art from that on the site. The dragons do not look like dragons from like Game of Thrones or anything like that. They look very Eastern in style. The animation looked very almost live action. You know how what was that Pixar animated movie with the umbrella and everything in the back? Like it looked like I guess even The Good Dinosaur, which we all probably have forgotten at this point. Like the world looked very live actiony. This looked very photoreal. So I'm excited to see more from this. So put that on your radar. Raya and the Last Dragon. And Pixar unveiled their 2 upcoming films, both of which are original films. After doing a couple sequels. Soul comes from Pete Docter, and this is about a man who, it asks the question, where when a baby seems to have like its own unique take on life, where do they get that? And before they're born, they go to a place to learn how to, to create their own soul. And that's basically the concept behind this Pixar animated movie, which follows a older man who wants anything to be a jazz musician, and it looks very charming. It looks, looks like the thing that we'd expect from Pete Docter in Pixar, and I'm very excited for that. I know I'm breezing over these things, but we have a lot to talk about here. The other movie they were talking about was Onward. This is the new movie coming from Dan Scanlon of Monsters University fame, and has a impressive voice cast, including Chris Pratt, Tom Holland, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, and Octavia Spencer. And this basically takes place in a fantasy world where the magic has been lost. And basically, there are orcs and all these things, but they're just living the mundane life that we are living here on Earth. And this is inspired by Scanlon. He never got to really know his father, and the premise of this movie, which we got to see some extensive footage from, is that the kid in this movie, his father died before he got to know him, and he created the spell that would bring him back for only one day, and he could spend one day with his kid. But the problem is the spell, when they try to do the spell, the crystal that is required for the spell breaks, and the father is only half created, so it's only his bottom half of his body, and they need to go on a quest, a fantasy-like quest, to get the ingredients that are required so that they can bring their dad back just for one day. Just to have that moment with their father. I feel like we're all gonna cry. We're gonna cry. Okay, and we're gonna talk tomorrow about the theme park announcements, so look forward to that. You can find more of all of our work at slashfilm.com. You can find this podcast, Slashfilm Daily, published every weekday on iTunes, Google, Overcast, Spotify, all the popular podcast apps. Please feel free to send your feedback, questions, comments, concerns to us at peter@slashfilm.com, and please rate and review this podcast on iTunes. Tell your friends. Spread the word. We'll see you tomorrow.